Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Neal DiPentino, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. Like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go all the way up to today. And then we want to talk about this new show that you're coming up with, talk about what Titan Media Worx is doing, that kind of thing, right? You guys are having a big impact in this world, and we want to talk about it. So thanks for being here, bud.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm honored. I tell you, I've listened to a couple of your podcasts and really have enjoyed them. And geez, I don't know why you would pick a guy like me, but I'm so glad you did.
I am too. So tell us where you were born.
Well, I was originally, I was born in Chicago, back in a really long time ago. But it's one of those things that Chicago was kind of a fleeting memory for me. We moved away, when I was quite young. Actually, I haven't even been, I was only 6 months old, I believe it was, moved back to Springfield, Missouri with my grandparents. Yeah. And that's kind of where I grew up. It's what I called home for most of my life, until my mother remarried. And then we hit the road. I lived in Arizona. I lived in New York. I lived in California, Colorado. Right now I live in Tennessee. So I've been all over the place. Yeah.
So nomad type of life. That's cool.
It's really funny about that you say that, because I feel very nomadic, and I get very uncomfortable if I've been in one location for too long. I got to be on the move all the time.
Isn't that interesting how that works? It's like you grow up a certain way, right? And then it's just kind of ingrained in you.
It really is. That's
cool. So let me ask you this. Growing up with this nomadic lifestyle, what was your favorite thing about it?
Well, let's start with what the least favorite thing was. Is I was always the new guy in school.
Yeah.
That was kind of, and a lot of people have a problem adjusting to that. Yeah. And for me, and it depended on where we were living too. I mean, there were some places that we lived that I just, I didn't fit. It just kind of sucked, to be honest with you. Yeah. But the positive of that whole thing is the experiences that I had in different places. I mean, you moved from Springfield, Missouri. I was a young kid, about 6 years old. I only wore shoes to church on Sunday. Yeah. And we moved to Buffalo, New York, and it is the world. It's crazy, so it was a little bit of a culture shock, but I learned so much, and I still have great memories from when we lived in the Buffalo area. Yeah. Chicago, the same thing. I mean, my mother was born and raised in the Ozarks around Springfield, Missouri. So she was a country girl. We grew up on a farm. Mm-hmm. My father, who adopted me, Danny DiPentino, he was an inner city kid, grew up on Taylor Street in Chicago. So they couldn't be any more different. So I got a little bit of both of that. And so from them, I learned it was a great experience learning from them. It was a great experience learning from the people and meeting the people I met all over the country.
Yeah, and I'll bet to this day I could throw you in a room full of strangers and you'd end up with some friends.
I think I would, and it's interesting is sometimes, people think you're putting on, but I go to Chicago, all of a sudden the accent comes back, I come down here to the South and the accent comes back. So it's like, well, wait a minute, where's this guy really from? And then when you mix them up, so you're like speaking with somebody in half Chicago accent, half, Southern accent. Colorado has no accent. People are like going, wow, where's this dude from? It's crazy.
That's it. It's so cool.
Yeah.
So growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
Oh, man. Well, my grandfather, I would have to say, was the one person who affected my life more than anybody.
The one in Springfield?
My parents, the one in Springfield, yes, my mother's father. As I mentioned, my parents divorced when I was 6 months old. I grew up in my grandfather's house until my mother remarried when I was 6 years old. So he was my dad. He was the father figure that I had, and really remained to be. I love my dad, but my grandfather was the one who influenced me the most,
Yeah.
throughout my entire life.
Yeah, mine too. Mine too. He was like a
Yeah,
dad to me. So
yeah.
where'd you go to high school? What town were you in high school?
Arvada, Colorado, which is a suburb, northern suburb in Jefferson County of Denver.
Okay.
So I was a proud Pomona Panther,
Yeah.
and interestingly enough, we were the first graduating class of that school.
Yeah.
We were they opened school in '74. I graduated in '75, and so that was really my only claim to fame there. And really, pretty much anybody who went to Pomona can agree with me. That was our class's claim to fame. It couldn't have been football because we lost every game except for one, and that was a tie in 2 years.
That's cool, man. Hey, at least you develop some thick skin, right? You know?
Absolutely.
You learn.
And today when I play fantasy football, I'm still, I tie one time a year. I lose
There it is. There
all
it
the other
is.
ones.
You're a champion, baby. You're a champion. You're
Absolutely.
probably the smartest guy I know because you're gonna learn more from losing than you will from winning anytime, right?
Well, that's what they say. It's like if you, I've heard this, several times. The only way you learn is from failing, right?
Yeah,
So I
true.
should be like a freaking Einstein, right?
I love it. That's cool. So in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
I always wanted to be an architect. And so from a young age.
Yeah.
And so that was really anything that had anything to do with design, art, that type of thing, that was always my favorite. And architectural drawing, I designed some houses, and I actually won a first place in a county art fair
There you
and was
go.
offered an internship from a local architect, and I turned him down. I was like
Yeah.
stupid. I'm like, what am I
Well,
going to make money for you? Come on. Are you kidding me? I'm like 18 years old. I know everything in the world there is to know.
right. Just ask me, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
So you leave high school. Where do you go?
Mhm.
Where do you go after high
I
school?
went into after high school. Well, my father had started a business with his brother. It was a construction company. And I was all set to go to college. I was pretty excited. I was planning on going to CSU in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, they hit a bad job and they lost their butts. And
Mm.
so, in order for them to survive that problem, they had to kind of dip into the college fund.
Yeah.
So I ended up, I looked at maybe doing some trade school, some things like that. Didn't really pan out. So I ended up going to the military.
So what branch did you go into?
Army. I went to the Army. I went to basic training at Fort Jackson, and then stationed and did my AAT in Fort Gordon in Augusta, Georgia.
What made you choose the Army?
Some friends of mine came back from their basic training on a
Mhm.
leave and told me how wonderful it was. And I'm like, okay, I could do that. I
Yeah.
think it was one of those things. I was always, again, the nomadic thing. I, um, I was just very antsy and
Yeah.
looking to do something. When I got out of school, since I wasn't going to go to college, at least right away, I really didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I thought, at least if I go into the military, my dad was an Army guy. If I go into the military, maybe I might learn something from someone, and I also could take advantage of some of the benefits that were available to me, afforded to me through the military. So
Yeah.
that's what I did.
So here's a question for you. What was your single favorite thing about being in the Army?
It's going to sound stupid, but I love the
It's
PT,
okay.
man.
It's okay.
I did. Yeah. I mean, I love getting yelled at by drill sergeants when I was in basic training. I mean, once we got out of basic training and you got kind of like everything kind of started getting a little bit more normalized and
Mhm.
everything, to me, it was like, well, it's just kind of like a job, and it was okay. It's what I did, but man, I just loved, I don't know, low crawling under in the sand under buildings and getting screamed at and having, I mean, it was different back then than it is now. I mean, it was rough. And I was, here I am, I'm like 18 or barely 18. I turned 18
Mhm.
in May. And, and I really had not you know, I traveled quite a bit, but I didn't experience the diversity that was in the military. So I was kind of like, it was kind of an eye opener, you know, for me. And I'd never been away from my parents, you know, for that length of time. So it was, you know, that was a little bit of a stress, stressing, but I made some wonderful friends. I had some great experience, some really good ones. I can't mention on this podcast, but
Yeah.
no, it was great. I loved it.
So you're a little bit of a masochist, is what you're saying. You like being yelled at, huh?
Yeah, not even a little bit. Yeah, not even a little bit.
So
Yeah,
we'll have to yell at
absolutely.
you before the podcast is over.
Please do. That
Something
make
like
yeah.
dropping
Well,
giving
my
clothing
wife,
or something, right?
yeah, my wife has taken over the position of drill sergeant in our
There you
household
go.
these days. So yeah.
There you go. There you go. So how does she prefer to be addressed? Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am.
No, we really have a great relationship. So, you know, yeah, yes, ma'am. And I don't say that to her. She doesn't like when I do that. I do that every now and then just to kind of bug her, but she says it makes her feel old. So
Yeah.
I don't do
You,
that.
you
But
ever
we're in
you
the
ever
South.
salute?
In the South, you're supposed to say, oh, no,
Yes,
never,
you are. Yes, you are.
never.
You
Not,
certainly are. You certainly
am
are.
I?
They'll lock you out the house if you don't use ma'am. Come on now. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you know, in
So
some cases, yeah. I mean, like it's interesting around here, where I live. If you're a child and you don't address an adult as you know with yes sir, no,
mhm,
yes ma'am, no,
mhm.
whatever, yes sir, whatever. I mean, you're going to be in big trouble when you get home.
Kind of like when I was 6 years old and in front of a bunch of the neighbor ladies, I asked my grandmother how old she was. The next thing I knew, I was picking myself up off the ground and I was seeing stars because my mother
Mm,
whopped me upside the head. I will never, in the rest of my life, I'm now 57, right? Yeah, right. I will never ask another woman how old she is ever. I just don't do it.
no,
Right?
no,
And I've
no,
had I've
no.
had women that I've worked with that have said to me, "Why haven't you ever asked me?" Because I literally learned my lesson when I was 6.
N- Absolutely,
We
that's
don't
right.
do that. We don't
We
do
don't
that.
do that.
Okay?
No,
Yeah.
no,
Here's the thing,
no,
right?
sir.
Yeah. It was capital
Yeah,
punishment pretty much, right? So I learned
absolutely.
my lesson anyway, right? So
Yeah.
after the army, where do you go?
I came back to Denver and I went to work for my dad's construction company. And I worked for him for, gosh, I can't even remember, several years, him and my uncle. And that was probably one of the best and one of the worst experiences of my life.
So
And I
why
say
was
that
it best and why
because,
was it worst?
well, it was the best because I learned work ethic.
Yeah.
You know, you got to realize so backstory, my father, both his parents passed away when he was 4 years old
Mm,
from TB, and so he was raised by relatives, and they had very little, and they learned how to stretch a dime. They did,
yeah.
and they understood the meaning of hard work, and that was back in the uh, early 50s,
Yeah.
mid 50s, late 50s, whatever. And, but my dad and my uncle never realized that the 50s were over. We're in the the 80s now, and we don't do the things in the 80s that we did back in, those days. But they, you couldn't have told them that anyway.
Yeah.
And they were hard. They were super hard on me because I was the only employee that was a relative.
Mhm.
And, it's interesting. I think about this a lot. I think that if I was stuck it out, then it would have been that business would have been mine. I would have
Yeah.
inherited it at some point in time, or at
Yeah.
least a portion of it. But that business was their dream, not mine.
Yeah. So you worked for them for several years, and at some point you decide to start Titan Media Works. What made you decide to do that? Number one, what was the thought process to it? And what was the single most important thing that you've learned?
Well, I mean, obviously, a lot happened between the time that I left my parents or my dad's business and started Titan. I mean, I spent several years. I worked in radio. I went back to school. I started in radio in a small market, and in that particular market, when you're in small market, you do everything. I literally did everything. I had a morning show, then I would go home, change clothes, go out in the field and sell. On the weekends, I did play-by-play football. And then when the light bulb went out on the tower, I'd climb 300 feet and fix that as well.
Yeah.
So you do just a little bit of everything. So it really
Jack of all trades, right? Yeah.
You really are a jack of all trades. But the one thing that was key in order to get the job is that I had to take a position in sales, which I had never done before in my life. I had never sold anything. I mean, lemonade, nothing. And I shortly became sales manager of that business and realized that, I had some skills that, beyond the radio thing that I could use to, feed my family and support them. And so I went on to work for several different companies in sales. I guess the most notable one would be the learning company, Kevin O'Leary's business.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked for him for 3 years, which was really exciting for me, still exciting for me today. But after I left there, I went to work as a vice president of sales for another multimedia company. I worked there for 3 years and decided that, I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit. I need to start something on my own, which I did. And 14 years later, I'm like saying, okay, it's time for me to get out of this. I'm like, now I'm 60, at the time, 66 years old.
Right.
It's not that I was wore out by any means. And I really had no plans for retirement, but it was like, I think this business has kind of, run its course, time to do something else. And, so retirement was the thing I was thinking of the most. And my friend and my partner, Cash Miller, had a business called Titan Digital, which was an Inc. 5000 marketing company. And he and I have done a lot of things together in terms of, projects and that type of thing over the years. We've been friends for like 13 years. And he asked me one day, he said, well, you're not doing anything anyway. You're probably bored out of your mind, aren't you? And I'm like, yeah. And he said, how would you like to be a guest host on my podcast? And I'm like, I didn't know you were doing a podcast. And he said, yeah, come on. And so he explained it all to me and told me what was going on. And so I did one, I did two, I ended up doing about 5 or 6 of them. And he said, man, you need to do your own show. And I said, well, I don't even know what that would be about. And he said, well, I'll figure that out for you. All you got to do is show up, and talk to people, interview people. And he said, I'll do the rest. I'm like, okay, fine. So that's kind of how everything kind of got started. And then probably a few months into it, I approached him and I said, look, I really kind of think this could be a really good business on its own. What if we were to take the podcasting portion of your business, because they were using it as a lead generator and for, and also just to kind of get, their messages out. I said, what if we start a podcasting company? We bring Ryan Shear, who is our managing partner right now. We bring him along, we make him a partner, and we take this thing and we see if we can, where we can take it. Let's build something. I'll invest if you're into it, and he said flat out, no. And I'm like, okay, well, so so, a couple of weeks go by and I come in to do.
You made that compelling argument and he turned you down?
Oh man, I had numbers and everything. Are you kidding me? I had graphs and PowerPoint, the whole 9 yards. No, I'm playing around with you. But no. So like, a couple of weeks go by and I come in and he says, hey, let's talk. And the next thing you know, we had created this business, Titan Media Worx, kind of a spinoff of the other company. And then about 3 months into it, he ended up selling the other business, so to focus on this and some other things. And so we're into it now. I think as of this is September, we've been into it for just a little over a year.
Wow, that's cool, man! Congratulations! I'm happy for you.
So thank you, appreciate that.
So Titan Media Worx helps people with their podcasts.
Yes.
And it's kind of stem to stern, right? It's you help them get started, you help them implement, you help them do the things they need to do. You also help them with content, it sounds like.
A little bit, yeah. So what we do is we basically we have a couple different programs that we can do for clients. One of them is like a complete startup. I mean, we take care of everything from helping you with the concept, with your branding, coaching you along, helping you with equipment, whatever you would need to start your own podcast. So if you've got an idea and you think that the world would love to hear what you've got going on, we can help you get that started. And once we get it started, we can help you maintain it. We can help market it. We can do a lot of different things for you. And then we also have the ability, a program, we work with existing podcasters who, and because you're a podcaster, one of the worst parts about it is once you hang up with me or once we get off the air here, I always say off the air. I know we're not on the air, but once we get finished with our podcast here, now you got to edit it. You got to, you got to do all the stuff you have to do to it. Then you have to distribute. There's just a whole bunch of stuff. Probably it's like an iceberg, all very bottom of it, right? It's not on the top. The tip top is where all the fun's at. So we can help with that as well. And then recently we added just outright editing. So if you're doing say for instance, a YouTube channel and you need help with editing, or you want to start one, we can do, do that for you as well. And help you with the marketing on that as well. And we basically have all of our prices are customized. So it just is based on what you need, the amount of time it's going to take for us to do what, to accomplish your goal, that type of thing. And that's really kind of the gist of what our program is.
So what's the single most important thing you've learned in the last year with Titan Media Worx?
Patience.
Wow.
Because I'm not a patient person at all. And, I've had my own business now, more of a solopreneur, I guess you would call it, for the last 14 years.
Right.
My partner has been doing this. I mean, his business was bigger than mine, but he was the boss of this business for 13 years.
Right.
Our other partners, kind of similar situations. And so when you've got 4 type A personalities, it's sometimes doesn't pan out the way you hope. It's like, I could remember back in the day, I was a big basketball fan and I was a Denver Nugget fan, and they brought in like some of the best players in the league because they figured that we have these great guys, and we put them all together. They're going to win a championship. Everybody else just roll over. We've got this, right?
Yeah.
The problem was they all had these huge personalities and they couldn't get along together and they sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, they were terrible, and that's kind of where we were. I mean, we were like, man, we were struggling. We're beating each other up. We were fighting. We were arguing all the time. And to the point where we're like, what did we do? I mean, because we were all friends, and now we are not, but, I guess, and I was probably the biggest culprit of that because I want everything fast. I want it tomorrow or yesterday, I should say. And, but I think we finally said, look, if we're going to make this thing, work out, we just need to we need to back off and everything. So we actually, Ryan Shear, who was in charge of our production at the time, we put him in charge of everything because he's the one of all of us that has the most energy and can go out and do everything from sales to production to whatever. He'll wash your car if you want him to, just to get a deal. I don't know if he'll do that or not. I'm just playing. But I mean, so we said, look, let's just back off. Let's let him take a hold of this thing and let's support him in every way we can. And that's the way it's gone. And it's been successful ever since.
Oh, that's cool. So you have a project that you wanted to talk about that's coming up.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it too. I think I mentioned to you, I've done 2 podcasts, the business breakthroughs, where I interviewed coaches in the business world. I also did another one called Brand Mavericks, which was very similar. And the one thing I found I love, we've had this conversation, you and I, it's like the people we talk to, you do form a relationship with them, and some of them you create a bond with. I mean, and I can't think of one single person that I've interviewed over the last year that I didn't enjoy probably more off the, away from the recording than I did on the recording.
Yeah.
Because that's when everybody was like super real. That's when you're having these conversations. It's like when you're in school or, or you're working for a business, you don't learn anything in the boardroom. You don't learn anything in the classroom. You learn in the hallway. Ryan
at the water
talks
cooler.
about at the water cooler, or if you're a smoker having a cigarette over by the trash can, or whatever the case might be. Right. But, I just kind of burned out on it. We still have episodes that are coming out, and it was a great show. It was fun. And I interviewed people from this country. One day I interviewed a person from Australia, one from Malta, and I interviewed another person who was in the UK. And so without the podcast, I would have never had that opportunity. And I just learned a lot about their culture, and it was a lot of fun, but it was time to move on. So one of the things that has really bothered me a lot over the last several years is, a lot of people are saying that the American dream is dead.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I was looking at a Newsweek article that stated 80% of all Americans under the age of 30 think that either the American dream is dead or it never existed.
Mm-hmm.
And I am I'm telling you, they're wrong 100%. And I know things are difficult and it looks discouraging from time to time, but I'm going to give you some facts. Back in 1960, my grandfather bought a house for $13,000. His monthly income at that time was $375, and he was at the high end
Mhm.
of that income. You know, I don't think it was difficult on him.
Mhm.
Fast forward 1977, the average house sold in America for $54,000 at 9 and 7.74%. That was the interest rate at the time. Gasoline was 62 cents. It had been bumped up from the year earlier at 60 cents or 40
Mhm.
cents. I'm sorry. So at that time, that was when I bought my first house, $29,000, which sounds like I can't even get a car for that anymore, right? But at the time, we were renting a one-bedroom apartment, $150 a month. We jumped into a $250 a month payment. My wife and I both had to take on extra jobs just to be able to make that payment.
Mhm.
And we were looking at the interest rate back at that time. It was pretty high too. It was like 9.74, much higher than what it is today.
Mhm.
And if you go back and you look at the income of that time against against the the monthly payment, we were paying 33% of our income was going in to pay that house. Now,
Yeah.
if you fast forward today, I mean, houses are a heck of a lot more expensive. About $511,000 is the average national average for a house. But right now we're looking at about a little over 6% for a fixed 30-year fixed loan, right?
Mhm.
So that's actually a little bit better than it was when I was young, when I was just getting started. Gas prices, yeah, they suck. Grocery prices suck, all that kind of stuff, but they weren't so great back then either. But if you take a look at the average monthly payment on a house versus what the wages are in this day and age, only 25% of your income goes toward the payment of your house, right?
Mhm.
That's a lot less than what it was when we were coming up. The whole purpose of telling you all this is that yeah, things or people think things are really rough right now, but they were worse, and we made it through, and we
Mhm.
succeeded. But here's the positive of that: about 4.4 million businesses were started since the pandemic.
Mhm.
4.4 million.
Yeah.
So what's happening is people have looked at the opportunities. They're different than they were back when I was young, when you were young. We have, I love this. Uncle Si on Duck Dynasty said, "You can't teach an old dog new tricks, but you can give him new tools." And by
Yeah.
God, we have a lot of tools that we can use today so that we can find our American dream, that we can create the American dream. And so that's really what this podcast is going to be about. It's not about preaching to anybody anything. We're going to interview people who have achieved the American dream and what they've done and how they've done it. And hopefully that'll inspire people to go out and say, you know what, maybe it isn't dead. And maybe I can make a difference in this world. That's
That's
my
awesome.
hopes.
I love that. And it
Yeah.
will be inspirational. It'll be one of those things that people will see what they've done and they'll think, "Hey, you know what? I can do that. If he can do that, I can, or she
Yeah.
can do that, I can," you
Yeah.
know? And that's a big deal. And you're right. I mean, there's the statistics are that too many young people are absolutely, and by the way, there's some older people that feel like this too. There's 69%
Absolutely.
of baby boomers that were recently surveyed said that they didn't think that their kids would have it as good as they had it. That's scary. That's really a
Yeah.
scary statistic. So yeah, I think the timing's perfect for what you're doing, and it'll have a major impact. In fact, I'd love to be on it. If you're looking for guests, I'd love to be on it.
Absolutely. I was thinking about that earlier when we were talking, and I'm thinking like, yeah, you definitely got to be a guest on my show.
That'd be a
I was
lot of
hoping you
fun.
would
I'd
ask
really
this.
enjoy it.
I was going to ask you, but I'm glad you asked. So
Yeah.
thank you.
So yeah,
Appreciate
I'd
that.
love to do it. And I invite myself to parties all the time, just so you know.
Why
I've
not? Right.
I'm a little
Absolutely.
shameless about it, right? So Liz,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Me too. Thank you. I'm honored to be on your show, and I really appreciate the time that you've given me today. It's awesome.
Thanks for being here, Neal.
You bet, buddy.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.